Okay, alright. So we are waiting for servers to sync up as we go live across multiple locations. So if you're watching this, please stand by. We will shortly actually begin. We are syncing all the locations since we go live across multiple locations. We are just waiting for the sync. We're almost there. I see a bunch of places already popping up here and there, but we've got so many more to go. So we are going. We are there. We're just about ready and prepared. Hold on. Keep your screen up. Remember, we're about to get read up. Ready, set, go. Almost there. Few seconds left, yo. What up, everybody? Welcome to 3D Changes Perspectives, and I hope to change your perspective today. Again, we're working and we're talking about Monero. Now today we plan on doing one of the last dives into Monero. This is the key to privacy. So this is again the last episode for us diving into Monero XMR, and I'm hoping to show you the last pieces of this puzzle to the public privacy. Already we've learned that XMR separates your IP from your broadcast transactions to the blockchain, and we also hide in the numbers on top of that. So this allows others to actually help us gain privacy while they gain privacy from us as well. And so what's the last step to the public privacy? Well, let's find out after today's partnerships and spartnerships. So I do want to thank the organized for teaming up with Bitcoin Live Digital Broadcasting DB, because Bitcoin Live DB and Deorganize is a powerhouse combo. I do see new heights for both organizations. Now, if you haven't checked out any of the organized early morning broadcasts for stacks and other topics that seem to be taking off with every morning on every day, well, go ahead and find them on just about anywhere you're watching this except for Odyssey. And I do want to thank our sponsors. So we have this neat little sponsor thing. I'm going to pop it up. Here we go. Okay, so I do want to thank Shieldfolio for sponsoring today's episode from within a quantum bit, as well as the Bitcoin Live DB network. Now, if you haven't seen Shieldfolio, they're like a little black book that are made from stone paper, so they're fade resistant, tear resistant, and even water resistant. So you know the info and secrets you store in your Shieldfolio will last and survive whatever you throw at it. I personally have a Shieldfolio, and I use it for my website info, contacts, crypto keys, among other things. So these are like little black books that are pocket sized and ready to be by your side regardless of the adventure in your life or online. Now, I do really mean that. I actually own one. I do use it for various different things. Basically anything I don't want to keep on my computer or online or anything, I keep in this little black book. And that's the great thing about it. You go on their website, they have a bunch more stuff there, but if you use the keyword, it'll take you directly there. And if you use the code BitcoinLive20, you get 20% off your purchase today. Now, I am going to leave the QR at the bottom of the screen throughout the entire episode, so that way you can just scan the QR with the little shield next to it after the episode's done. Go down, see them, check them out, and just remember to use Bitcoin Live 20 to get 20% off. Now I'm going to go roll in with the roll-ins and get rolling in. Thank you again, Shieldfolio, for sponsoring today's episode. Now I do want to say, welcome into the photon of the greater fourth dimensions quantum machine. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Why we do this a special way where basically as we go, you're going to be able to see what's going on. You're going to be able to follow along with your phone or whatever, or after the fact you can find anything we're talking about by using these little QRs. So you probably see the little QR on your screen. That is for the location we're at right now. So for every place that we go to, we're going to put a QR for as long as it's an online availability, and then you'll be able to keep up, check them out later, or see what's going on after the fact. So I just want to point out, this is the Organized Media. They go live almost every morning with their Bitcoin and stacking stacks. So check them out for your daily hookup on what's digitally popping. They're really cool. They got a bunch of stuff going on. You can see they got tons of videos and stuff. We're just going to keep on going. Let me go ahead and... So today's free pre-search query is XMR key to privacy. Like always, I do not use this query in today's episode research, but that doesn't mean we won't have overlapping links. If anything about today's episode interests you, this free pre-search query should help you find more help after today's episode. Just replay after the show, scan the QR, and jump in with your phone or use a QR reader to see this query and start your next rabbit hole. Okay. All right. So, why do I... Yep, that is today's episode. So what we're going to be talking about, as you saw, we are talking about stealth addresses. So we have really shown how to separate ourselves from almost everything except receiving funds. We all can't rely on only block payouts or for funds. So eventually, down the line, that data needs to be separated or it will trickle back to us. Well, this is how we prevent that trickle back, and it really is just stealth addresses. So today, we're going to watch this little video on Get Monero. I'm going to go ahead and give you the QR. It's not super long or anything. They're going to be able to break this information down to the smallest points possible.
Let's take a step back and recap some concepts from the previous video. We learned that Monero uses a distributed peer-to-peer consensus network to record transaction outputs in a blockchain. If Alice owns Monero, it means that she has exclusive control over some of these outputs. When Alice sends Monero to Bob, Alice is announcing to the network that she wishes to transfer the value of some of her outputs to a brand new output for Bob, which only he can control. In other words, a transaction is the transformation of old outputs belonging to one wallet into new outputs belonging to another. Let's take this a step further to see how stealth addresses enhance a user's privacy. In every transaction, a stealth address, also known as a one-time public key, is automatically generated and recorded as part of the transaction to indicate who can spend an output in a later transaction. An outside observer cannot tell if funds are moving from Alice to Bob, nor link wallet addresses together by just looking at the blockchain. Therefore, when Alice sends Monero to Bob, the output Bob receives will not be publicly associated with Bob's wallet address. However, if Alice ever needs to prove that she in fact sent Monero to Bob, her wallet has the ability to verify that payment was sent. Bob can rest assured that no one else can see when or if any Monero was sent to him. If Bob were a merchant, this feature would be a great benefit because no one can tell how many different customers he has, whether any of them are repeat customers, or if he has any customers at all. Now, buckle your seatbelts because we are about to go over some fairly technical stuff. A Monero wallet address is a 95-character string, which consists of a public view key and a public send key. When Alice sends Monero to Bob, Alice's wallet will use Bob's public view key and public spend key as well as some random data to generate a unique one-time public key for Bob's new output. Everyone can see the one-time public key on the blockchain, but only Alice and Bob know that Alice sent Monero to Bob. The output is created in such a way that Bob is able to locate the output destined for him by scanning the blockchain with his wallet's private view key. Once the output is detected and retrieved by Bob's wallet, he would be able to calculate a one-time private key that corresponds with the one-time public key and spend the relevant output with his wallet's private spend key. This whole process occurs without ever having Bob's wallet address publicly linked to any transaction. As you can see, stealth addresses prevent outputs from being associated with wallet addresses. The sender's privacy is shielded with the use of ring signatures.
Yep, that's basically the thick of it. That is stealth addresses. So there is a ton of cryptographic reliance, but so do all of these techniques for privacy. So hopefully this video does help you understand simply what stealth addresses are, because there is no simpler way to explain it. This really is the easiest and simplest way to explain it. Now we are going to look at it from different perspectives, and we do have something else about Monero that creates privacy that we haven't talked about yet. So we're going to continue on with this a little bit. So like last time, I didn't just show you the video, I gave you the data that goes along with the video. So this is the information that follows with that video specifically. So when you go to this one here, it will bring up that video plus all this information. So basically, we let others broadcast our data and only broadcast others' data when then we obfuscate our transaction details and use zero proofs to help before we even stealth address receive. So all in the name of privacy and true fungibility. So now we have to ask, like, are there downsides to any of this stuff, like the zero knowledge proofs? Something we talked about in a previous episode is that Bitcoin has had zero knowledge proofs since 2016, and they were pretty much, like, by 2017 everyone's kind of stopped doing it just because it was not reliable for verification. So what are the downsides of zero knowledge proofs in this case? So we're going to read some of the comments. So Monero currently uses zero knowledge proofs with both sender and the amount. So the downside is that storing these ZKPs on the chain takes up more space than plain text equivalent, and the upside is just improved privacy. So it's a pretty typical trade-off though. And then you see, to my knowledge, ring CT obfuscates but not zero knowledge proof, and then they come in here and they say, hey, there's actually this thing in there called Peterson commitments, and we'll get into that. So then there's this person like upon real novel, unproven security assumptions, blah blah blah. But then it's like, actually no, from a lot of people's understanding, the maths behind zero knowledge proofs are pretty well established at this point. Like, believe it or not, zero knowledge proofs been around since like the 70s. So they've actually been tested for quite a bit. Monero uses ZKPs to hide transaction amounts. ZKP snarks that perhaps hasn't been battle tested yet. And so there is, and basically I want to ensure to most people, ZK snark is not the same as just a ZKP. Which is kind of like when ZK snarks first came out and stuff, a lot of people were, you know, complaining and blah 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 because it wasn't just a ZKP, it wasn't just that simple. So here's some more information. Alright, so we're going to get into some of that right there. Let me go ahead and give you the QR again for this. Jump into the Peterson commitment. So this is a part that's obscure about Monero, but it is here. It is a part of it, and you see we're on Get Monero. So we'll go into it. The Peterson commitments are cryptographic algorithms that allow a prover to commit to a certain value without revealing it or being able to change it. So when you spin Monero, the value of the inputs that you are spinning and the value of the outputs that you are sending are encrypted and opaque to everyone except the recipient of each of those outputs. Peterson commitments allows you to send Monero without revealing the value of the transactions. Peterson commitments also make it possible for people to verify that transactions on the blockchain are valid and not creating Monero out of thin air. The reason why this line right here is in here is because that was a problem for a while. I was one of the people that had access or helped with creating Miner X, which eventually was designed to be able to create Monero transactions out of thin air, where we were mining one thread of Monero to use the maths to It's basically to take what we were getting and using maths to mimic transactions, and then putting them into a CT to go ahead and transact to send ourselves Monero that never existed. And that was possible at one time. So Peterson commitments really ensure that that cannot be done anymore. And one of the things they had to do was increase the CT ring size to ensure that this Peterson commitments were working properly. Because we were basically abusing the fact that it was not a high enough CT ring at the time, and it could be abused. So a lot of things have had to have happened and had to have been done to ensure that Monero is as private as it is. Because at one time Monero wasn't this private. At one time Monero was traceable. At one time Monero, at one time, if you sent Monero to somebody and they sent that, or they used that output within 15 minutes, you could see where it went. And if that one was used within 15 minutes, like the same 15 minutes, you could see where it went. Like, you could see all the transactions within the first 15 minutes of you sending it. So there used to be a ton of issues, and creating like the validation key for your outputs, for the blockchain to be able to validate from miners, and for there to still be a way to create a view key for the individual receiver. So all of these are different, because like it used to be the sender and the receiver's view key was the same. Now a sender and a receiver's view key are different, and we have things like Peterson commitments to help us ensure that our rings are proper, and some other really fun, neat techniques like they were saying here. It also allows you to, without revealing the value of a transaction. That's kind of important. So as long as the encrypted output amounts created, which include the output of the recipient, had a change output back to the sender, and the unencrypted transaction fee is equal to the sum of the inputs that are being spent, it is a legitimate transaction and can be confirmed to be not creating Monero out of thin air. So this part right here, in an output for the recipient and a change back output to the sender. So imagine there being multiple change output backs to multiple senders. That would be an issue, right? So Peterson commitments mean that the sums can be verified as being equal, but the Monero value of each of the sums of the Monero value of the inputs and outputs individually are undeterminable. Now Peterson commitments also means that even the ratio of the input to another or the output to another is undeterminable, and that there again creates this magical thing. That's like a magic thing right there. It is unclear which inputs are really being spent, as the ring signature lists both the real inputs being spent and the decoy inputs. Therefore, you don't actually know which input Peterson commitments need to be summed. That's okay, because the ring CT signature only has to prove that for one combination of the inputs and the outputs are equal to the sum of the inputs. For mathematical reasons, this is this is an impossible to forge. So, nice. And then you see there's more information here. So basically what they're saying is the Peterson commitment allows you to mix stuff in a way to where none of the stuff that you're outputting is determinable. Like, you couldn't even use maths to break it down to determine what is inside that Peterson commitment once you have a good enough ring. So that's this is like a math. This is like a magical math system. Peterson commitments is like magical math. That's how I like to look at it, because it's kind of hard to explain outside of, well, because we are taking a bunch of stuff and we're mixing it the way we are, you know. It's like when you talk about encryption type SHA-3. I hate SHA-3. SHA-3 is like the dumbest SHA I've ever heard of. But at the same time, it's one of like the most unique. So it allows you to absorb a bunch of information into like a sponge. And then you can like squeeze out a mixture of all that information into tiny droplets that gives you information about everything, but not enough to determine anything. Now, there was something about SHA-3. People figured out that if you keep asking for more droplets and more droplets, you can eventually get enough information to be able to backtrack. But it's that's if you're just using SHA-3 with basic like text inputs. You'll eventually get those text outputs, but it could still be mixed up in a way to where you're kind of unable to determine the difference. And Peterson commitment kind of does it where even if you had all the data back out, it would be mixed in a way to where you would be unable to determine like what was mixed where and how, so you couldn't come up with the original inputs. And that's really the point there. We've gotten to a point where we're able to remove ourselves, remove our computer, remove our wallet, and now we are removing our receiving wallet as well. So whenever we talk about wallets, we do talk about it as like one object, because it is one object, but there's two sides of that object. So it's kind of like a coin, right? It's got two sides of it. So one side is simply receive, one side is simply send. And the reason why it's kind of important to protect both sides of it is like, imagine if you had like got a quarter and you trimmed it down so people couldn't tell it was a quarter, and you flattened one side, but you didn't flatten the other side, so that way you could still like technically prove it's a quarter. But there's two sides, right? There's a face side and a non-face side. So if we was to flatten down the non-face side, we can still prove it's a quarter. And if we flatten down the face side, based on which quarter we do it, we might not be able to determine what that other is, because because what's on the other side. And at the same time, we could flatten part of both sides to where if you knew what a quarter looked like on both sides, you could probably figure it out. Otherwise, you would be just confused. Okay. So this is the big boy. Move that big boy over. Alright, so this is the hidden part of ring signatures. So I kind of want to look inside this paper. So, Shin Lotte Monero Research Labs. Wow, that's pretty neat. So this is the actual paper on this, exactly what we're talking about. Alright, so I need to start reading on page 3, it says, so I don't need to be reading here. Actually, I kind of want to read some of this. The article introduces a method of hiding transactions, amounts, in the storage decentralized anonymous cryptocurrency Monero, similar to Bitcoin. Monero is a cryptocurrency in which it's distributed through the proof-of-work mining process. The original Monero protocol was based on CryptoNote, which uses ring signatures and one-time keys to hide destination and amount and origin of transaction. Recently, the technique of using a commitment scheme to hide the amount of a transaction has been discussed and implemented in the Bitcoin Core developer Gary Maxwell. In the article, a new type of ring signature, a multi-layered linkable spontaneous anonymous group signature. That's a long name, right? Multi-layered linkable spontaneous anonymous group signature is described, which allows for hidden amounts, origins, and destinations of transactions, which reasonably, efficiently, and verifiable trustless coin generation. The author would like to note that early drafts of this were publicized in the Monero community and on the Bitcoin Research channel, because this was multi-layered linkable spontaneous anonymous group signature, the MLSAG. Can't believe that's really a thing. It was originally on Bitcoin, I believe. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it was originally on Bitcoin. So we're gonna go to page 3 and we're gonna look and see. Yeah, ad hoc, spontaneous ad hoc, right? Recall that in Bitcoin, each transaction is signed by the owner of the coins being sent out. These signatures verify that the owner is allowed to send of the coins. This entirely analogs the signature of like a check from your bank. CryptoNote and Ring coin. Yep, that was a coin at one time. Advanced this ideal by using ring signatures, which were originally described in this paper over here as a digital signature that specifies a group of possible signers, such as the verifier can't tell which member actually produced the signature. Now, we've described this before, where I said you have like 13 people, you have a bunch of people, and you just say, what's the phrase? And they all say the phrase, right? But then you gotta have each one of them come up to you one at a time and say the phrase again for you to figure out which voice is the one you're looking for. So the ideal, therefore, is to have the origin pub key of the transaction hidden in a group of pub keys which all contain the same amount of coins, so that no one can tell which user actually sent the coins. The original CryptoNote protocol, as described, implements a slight modification to prevent double spins, namely a traceable ring signature, which is a slight modification to those described in is employed. So basically he's saying you would have an employed ring signature inside here. You'd have one ring signature which is slightly different that would allow you to trace back that signature. This type of ring signature has the benefit of not allowing the owner of a coin to sign two different ring signatures with the same pub key without being noticed on the blockchain. The obvious reason for this is to prevent double spinning, which in Bitcoin refers to spinning a coin twice. Ring coin uses a more efficient linkable ring signature, which is a slight modification of the LSAG. And so the one benefit using the above types of ring signatures over the other anonymizing techniques such as coin join or using coin mixing services is that they allow spontaneous mixing. With coin join or coin mixers, it is similarly possible to hide the originer in a given transaction. However, these techniques in practice need some sort of centralized group manager, such as a centralized coin join server, where transactions are combined by a trusted party. In this case, the trusted party is compromised. The anonymity of the transaction is also compromised. Some coins like Dashcoin attempt to negate this by using a larger number of trusted mixers, like masternodes, but the number is still much smaller than just using the coin. In contrast with a spontaneous ring signature, transaction can be created by the owner of a given pub key. This is a spontaneous or ad hoc property without relying on any trusted server, thus providing for safer anonymity. One possible attack on the CryptoNote ring coin protocol is blockchain analysis based on the amount sent in a given transaction. For example, if the adversary knows that 0.9 coins have been sent at a certain time, then they may be able to narrow down the possibility of the sender by looking for transactions containing that 0.9 coins. This is somewhat negated by the use of a one-time key, but since the sender can include a number of change addresses in a transaction, thus obfuscating the amount in which has been sent with the type of knapsack mixing. So I remember earlier I was saying, well, what if you had a bunch of change addresses? This used to be a thing where you would have a whole bunch. However, this technique has the drawdown side. It can create a large amount of dust transactions on the blockchain. Transactions of small amounts take up proportional amount of space than their importance. It can also allow you to take a whole bunch of fake dust and turn it into a real transaction or into a real Monero. Additionally, well, it doesn't say that in here, but that was something they found out eventually. And the way to break that was just simply prevent knapsack mixing and increase ring size. So additionally, the receiver of the coins may have to sweep all the dust when they want to send it, which then creates a super high transaction, possibly allowing for a small adversary to keep track of which keys go together in some manner. Furthermore, it is easy to establish an upper and lower bound on the amount sent. Another downside in the original CryptoNote is set up that it requires a given pair to be used in a signature with other pub keys having the same amount. For less common amounts, this means that there are maybe smaller potential pairs available on the chain to sign with. Thus, the original CryptoNote protocol and the potential anonymity set perhaps smaller than may be desired, and all of this may be weakened. Wow, there's some fun stuff, but basically, it does show you that, no, Monero wasn't even the first people using this type of technology. There were other people using this technology. Like, there were multiple coins trying to use ring signatures for security, and very few of them were getting anywhere. Monero is one of these few that has figured out a major way to get it all to work. So the Ring Confidential Transactions Protocol provides a strongly decentralized cryptocurrency. There is no privileged party, which has provable security estimates regarding the hiding of amounts, origins, and destinations. In addition, coin generation in the Ring Confidential Transactions Protocol is trustless and verifiable secure. These 5 factors are necessary to cash like cryptocurrencies as Monero. Okay. It's just the word 5 factors. It threw me off for a second. And you see there's a whole bunch of different references of where this information came from or how it came to be. So, okay. Woo! That is a good fun talk from me. I don't know about you, but basically, turns out this concept was actually tried and tested elsewhere in an early version of XMR-based crypto note. So it was never trusted by XMR, but if anything, just used in a simple method as possible, while later making it more complex and better for what is actually needed. The prevention of trickle-back exposure in the blockchain and data made. I'm going to say that again. One of the things that they really needed was the prevention of trickle-back exposure on-chain to the data made. And they really did. So one of the things I was saying was, at one time Monero was traceable. Now we're wondering, how untraceable is it? Okay? So this is a public-facing article that is out here basically to help people understand if XMR is traceable or not. So we're going to read it. So in blockchain design, anonymity and pseudonymity are analog principles. The Bitcoin network is a pseudonymous blockchain, meaning the transactions recorded in the open ledger that anyone can view. But personal information about the sender and receiver are not readily transparent. However, the advancements in blockchain analysis have led to Bitcoin transactions being easily traceable. With blockchain analytics, companies being able to figure out which addresses belong to which people, making Bitcoin synonymous but not anonymous. A couple of pronouncement techniques involve revealing the real identities of Bitcoin users by connecting the dots between publicly available transaction metadata such as addresses, timestamps, and amounts with the user's IP address. Even when they use separate addresses for every transaction, one can backtrack the transfers to the root with their metadata. IP address tracing is the process of identifying the origin and location of the internet user by analyzing their unique IP address. It has been around since the early days of the internet, dating back to the 1970s and 80s. It is used in network diagnostics, cybersecurity, and law enforcement. In light of such loopholes, the Monero network has born as a form of a project known as Bitcoin in 2014. Monero is one of the earliest blockchains to advocate complete anonymity, which entailed addressing the anonymity weaknesses plaguing networks like Bitcoin. So, what is Monero? And it says Monero's first privacy focus on censorship, blockchain resistant. Censorship resistant. Every Monero blockchain user and their transactions are anonymous by default to essential characteristics of the cornerstone of Monero protocol. Untraceability. All possible senders are words for each incoming transaction. They're equal. They're probably equal. That's what that means. Unlinkability. It is impossible to prove any 2 transactions were sent from the same person. And that's super important. So, alright. Now we're going to go through all this all. No. But we do want to get into the mining, because it's nice. Monero uses a unique POW, or proof of work, mining algorithm called RandomX. This is an ASIC resistant. Here's what it means. Bitcoin network follows a 1 CPU, 1 vote policy in its mining protocol. The logic proved sufficiently equitable in the early days of the network when the hashing power required to run the network as shallow and affordable. However, as the network grew in adoption of specialized hardware, as ASICs emerged, ASICs were custom built for mining and solving hash functions efficiently. Bitcoin mining has since become a race to acquire the most potent ASICs, where every CPU is undoubtedly not equitable, leading to decentralization of mining activity in pools and places with cheap electricity. And what they really mean is you see a bunch of people, you see a bunch of miners ending up in the same places. That's really what that means. So Monero being ASIC resistant, the RandomX mining algorithm constantly updates its code to maintain ASIC resistance. RandomX deploys RAM-heavy techniques to make mining memory intensive. Adding RAM to ASICs is expensive and complex. The memory-hardened nature of RandomX outweighs the benefits of deploying expensive ASICs over conventional CPUs, destroying its consensus process. So it also has adaptive block size. We've talked about that before, where the Monero's adaptive block size adjusts on the transactional volume, ensuring that mining remains efficient to the network and can scale with demand. The feature ensures that the transactions are processed on time, even during high demand. IP address privacy. So we have Dandelion++, and as you can tell, this is probably kind of old because they're talking about Covery, which I think Covery is new. They ended up using Dandelion++, so we never went with Covery. And so if I keep going further, it's going to get kind of more confusing, but I do like this image. I don't remember this popping up last time. Nice. And it's kind of nice. You see signers from the past transactions, new transaction as seen by real signer, and then new transaction as seen by everyone else. You see question marks. Nice. They got the stealth addresses in here, because believe it or not, like stealth addresses, I think we had before Dandelion++ and some other stuff. It was kind of important to try to get really early on, and as we saw, the original ring CT for Monero was different than what it is now, because it was originally done in a way to where you could, like, it was possible to trace one of those, you know. Now, as I keep going down here, like, a lot of this is gonna just have more and more and more of stuff that probably doesn't really matter. But if you think this is neat information, maybe you want to come in here and find out more about it, because there is, as you see, a lot more data here that we're not going to be talking about. So anytime I do a dive, I always try to give you the repo for the project. So here it is, the Monero project. It's still a project. Now, we used to call Bitcoin a project. We used to call Bitcoin a test, and it's no longer being called that. It hasn't been called that since like 2017. Monero still is a project, thankfully. And then if you want to stay in touch with the community, this is pretty much the way to do it. As you can see here, they put in all their tech information, blah blah blah. Just to get all this neat data. Just if you like for example, if we click on here, see location, the matrix room, no one left behind, no one left behind, no social. There's a matrix link right here. The IRC channel is no one left behind. If you need to find a log for the last meeting, use here, and that's all the information there. So you have to be there to see it, to know it. That's kind of cool, right? And we saw a proposal there for a second. Yeah, right here. So even stuff like this, it comes in. It's really nice. So this really comes down to it. Okay, we have pretty much reviewed Monero to its point, to its core, to as much as we're going to be able to show you and talk about without using kind of graphs and demonstrations and other things. We might have to do that at a completely different time. So many people say that that's not all of the Monero iceberg, and I'm kind of pointing that out. That there is still some more stuff that we could look at or do, but that would require more planning and more other things to help explain. Because a lot of that stuff is very complex, so having a visual would be easier to deal with it. And as one of those last articles kind of hinted at, XMR didn't even start off as Monero nor XMR. It was Bitcoin. Both Monero and Bitcoin exist at the same time, but XMR has its own stance in the ocean of cryptographic financial solutions, while Bitcoin really doesn't. And that's kind of the important part about Monero. Monero shows that as long as a blockchain is willing to adapt, change, and do things, it has the ability to survive. I don't think Bitcoin has changed since the day Monero split off from it. I think it's exactly the same. And I personally have owned, and I think probably still own Bitcoin to this day. One of the things that people loved about Bitcoin, there was some anonymity, and it was extremely fast. Like, most transactions happen within the same second, and that's insane. So, if you think Monero is actually kind of cool or whatever, go back through, check out the links that we gave you through the QRs, listen to all the stuff that we watched, go through the other episodes, because Monero's iceberg is deep. It runs super, super deep. But a lot of the stuff about it isn't much. It's kind of just like a little sliver in the iceberg. So if you want to take these little slivers out and break them down and learn about them, I've given you all the locations to do so. Get your card reader, go back through the different episodes, and find all the data, and then learn more about Monero. But if you've really enjoyed today's episode, I'm going to attempt on the next episode that we go into to talk about the difference between knots and core. And I know that's going to be a tough one, but I'm hoping it'll be a fun one. Alright everybody, thank you all for showing up, coming in, and watching today's episode. Hope to see you next time.